In 2010, a case in Mexico garnered significant public attention. Paulette Farah, a 4-year-old girl, disappeared one early morning while sleeping in her own home. Police officers, reporters, and family members continued to appear at the crime scene to gather information. The girl was found 9 days later, unfortunately, dead. Could you even imagine the most bizarre fact? They found the body of the little girl in her own bedroom. What happened to Paulette Farah? Paulette Gebara Farah was born on July 20, 2005, in Huixquilucan, Mexico. She was the youngest daughter of lawyer Lisette Farah and the successful real estate agent Mauricio Gebara. She had a sister who was 3 years older, also named Lisette, after her mother. Since they both share the same name, whenever I am referring to the mother, I will only use the name Lisette, and whenever I am referring to the daughter, I will highlight her as Lisette's daughter. Mauricio was well known in the region for being an influential estate broker. He even had strong attachments with important politicians. According to some sources, Lisette had an extramarital relationship. It is not possible to confirm the veracity of this information, but I must bring it now because of the development of the narrative. Although the Gebara family had excellent financial conditions, dealing with Paulette's health issues was not easy, as she was born prematurely, and several comorbidities were part of her life. The girl had cognitive problems. At the age of 4, she was still unable to walk normally. Besides the mobility difficulties, she was much smaller than expected for her age, and her speech was also quite impaired. Paulette required a lot of attention and needed to be monitored by specialized professionals. Despite all the difficulties, she was progressing well in the treatments and exceeding some of the doctor's expectations. She started to walk, even though it was still arduous to her. She began to communicate, and as a result, she started attending school. At home, the family had the help of Erica and Martha Casimiro, 2 sisters who worked as Paulette's nannies, taking turns caring for the girl. On March 19, 2010, Paulette, who was then 4 years old, and her eldest sister, who was 7, travelled with their father to Valle de Bravo, a city in Mexico about a 2-hour drive from Huixquilucan. Lisette did not travel with her family. She told her husband that she would take advantage of this time to travel with a friend, but some people believe she actually travelled with her supposed lover. The family came back home on Sunday, March 21st in the evening. Lisette had arrived hours before, as she wanted to be at home when her daughters arrived, as she had the habit of putting her children to bed. The next morning, the 22nd, around 8 a.m., Erica the nanny helped the couple's eldest daughter get ready for school and then went to Paulette's room to wake her up, but she could not find the little girl. She looked for her in the other rooms of the house. No signal. She immediately informed the girl's parents that their youngest daughter was not in her bedroom, but the parents did not seem to care that much. Erica then went looking for the girl in the condominium areas, but she had no success. The images from the building's security cameras were reviewed. However, during the entire period that the family was at home, no one was seen entering or leaving the premises, and there was no image of Paulette circulating the area after arriving from the trip with her father. The police were called only after all the facts were established. It wasn't Mauricio or Lisette who made the call. The girl's aunt was responsible for that. And I believe you may be asking yourself the same question I have asked myself. How come those parents seem to be so oblivious? It seems unbelievable, but it's true. According to testimonies, at first, neither of them gave the minimum attention expected of 2 parents who had just had a daughter go missing. Police checked the entire apartment. They practically ransacked it. Even sniffer dogs were taken to the scene by them, but they found no trace of Paulette. Due to Mauricio's influence in the region, the Attorney General of the State of Mexico, a personal friend of his, joined the case to assist with the search and called dozens of police officers and investigators to cover the investigation. Paulette's disappearance began to take on significant proportions. The media frequently discussed the subject. Lisette gave several interviews, some of which were conducted in her daughter's own room, where she would sometimes sit on her daughter's bed and share her version of the events. However, people began to notice that Lisette did not show much emotion and did not cry at any point. At one point, when she was a little impatient with the questions, Lisette even said that a UFO could have abducted her daughter, as she had no other explanation for her disappearance. Another strange fact, Lisette used to ask news teams to tell her what questions reporters would ask during the interview. According to some of them, she always seemed to be forcing sadness. She continued to carry on with her life, usually as if her daughter's disappearance had not affected her at all. Mauricio always gave generic answers and seemed uninterested in getting too involved with the media. Paulette's aunt, the same one who called the police when she found out the girl was missing, was keen to ask for help on social media. She posted photos of her niece and called for help in communities of disappeared people. On March 27th, the 6th day of her disappearance, Lisette gave another interview to a TV channel. She begged for her daughter to return and showed the reporter some of Paulette's personal belongings and clothing. Among the clothes were long-sleeved blue and red pajamas with a reindeer print. On March 31st, around 2 a.m., after 9 days of disappearance, a power outage occurred in the area. When the power returned, Paulette, inexplicably, was found in her own room, but lifeless, trapped in a gap of around 15 centimeters between the wooden bed and the mattress, but nothing there made sense. The bedsheet had been removed some days before by police officers so that police dogs could sniff it out. Furthermore, family members slept in that bed during the days of the disappearance, and a key fact is that Lisette was often seen by everyone sitting on that bed in almost all interviews. Do you want to know the strangest part of all this? Paulette was wearing the blue and red reindeer print pajamas that her mother presented on TV in one of the interviews. Paulette's body was taken for examination by the police. The results indicated that although she had been missing for 9 days, she had just died 3 days ago. In addition, there were some injuries to one of her knees and one of her elbows, but she showed no signs of physical or sexual violence. The report also revealed that there were no traces of drugs or medicinal substances in the body, and the cause of death was asphyxiation. Both the police and reporters questioned Lisette about her pajamas, but she claimed that Paulette and her sister had matching pajamas and the same size. Lisette never showed the second pair of pajamas, so this information also did not seem genuine because Paulette was younger and much smaller than her sister. The parents and nannies were detained preventively because their statements were wildly divergent. Lisette was even named as the primary suspect when the police found a recording where she told her eldest daughter that she couldn't say anything to the police, just say that she was sad about her sister's disappearance, because if she said something inappropriate, the police might suspect that they had done some harm to Paulette. Here I open a parenthesis to make it clear that none of the sources researched say what type of recording this is. It could be a phone call or someone who secretly recorded it. That's unclear. Unfortunately, they only mention a recording. I personally think it is some audio from a recording of the reports where, at some interval, and without Lisette knowing the equipment was on, the conversation ended up being captured. However, in her statement, she claimed that the authorities were distorting this recording. and that advising her daughter not to get involved was justified, as she was just a child. The conclusion of the investigations was as follows. While sleeping, Paulette moved on the bed until she reached the end of it, and accidentally fell her head into a space at the foot of the bed, between the furniture frame and the mattress. And as she had her physical limitations, she was unable to ask for help and ended up dying from asphyxiation due to chest compression. With this, all suspects in the investigation were released. No one was charged with her death. This left the population appalled, and Lisette was known as the most hated mother in Mexico. People believed that Mauricio's influence and the fact that they were a wealthy family meant that they were not charged with Paulette's death, but some theories have been raised. The first one is that Lisette, the eldest sister, had accidentally killed the girl, and the parents covered up the incident so no one would be punished. Second, some people think that one of the nannies could have taken Paulette's life, by accident or not, but there is no explanation for this theory. However, in this situation, why would the parents be acting so strangely? The nannies were investigated, and police found no incriminating evidence. Third, Lisette would have suffocated her daughter and hidden her body because she wanted to live with her lover, and her daughter would be a hindrance, as she was a disabled child who demanded attention and a lot of time from her caregivers. She may have imagined that in the event of a separation, custody of her daughter would remain with her. They also say that Lisette never accepted the fact that Paulette was born with needs. Fourth, there is also the theory that the family was secretly going through major financial problems. As Paulette required a lot of expenses, the parents decided together to eliminate her. On April 6, 2010, little Paulette, just 4 years old, was buried in the Panteón Francis de San Joaquin in Mexico City. Under Mexican law, bodies that come from deaths caused by accidental, violent, or suspicious deaths cannot be cremated until the end of the investigations. 7 years after the death, the authorities considered that Paulette's remains would no longer be necessary for any investigation of the case, as the investigation was closed as an accidental death, not a homicide, and no other information outside this aspect had appeared in recent years. Thus, on May 3, 2017, the girl's body was exhumed and cremated. Despite the outcome given to the case, many questions remain unanswered to this day. Why were the Gebaras so indifferent to their daughter's disappearance? How was Paulette there in the room where dozens of people passed by during the investigations and no one noticed? Not even sniffer dogs. Many people had access to that bed. Reporters, family members, relatives, and police officers visited the room several times. Some people even sat right on top of where the body was found. So, how come no one noticed anything? It seems evident that the body was never there, but then, where was it? And why did it appear there just after a power outage? And if that's what actually happened, who put her in that location and why? Why didn't the parents make any effort to look for their daughter? It was the nanny who had to visit the condominium, and an aunt who called the authorities. And the central question, what really happened to Paulette? Unfortunately, we will never know these answers. Whether a crime really occurred or if it was an accident, as the report suggests, Paulette will never receive the justice she deserves.